Hi everybody! We're back with another video. I'm Camille.
I am Chris.
And we are making a stink.
We are making a stink.
So today, you've been waiting for Chinese Oud by Russian Adam, Areej le Doré, to come in the mail, and it has arrived.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised.
A few days ago. He spent some time with it.
Yeah, no, I've had it, I guess, about 5 days. Mm-hmm. So it's, you know, it's not a first impression. I wore it pretty much all week. To get a good grasp of it. But I think a lot of people are excited about this. It was a single release that he did.
Hang on, I'm too close to you.
So this isn't, so his last collection was the 6th collection. So this is actually just kind of a one-off that he did with a friend of his.
That's right.
Jamira Oud.
Jamira Oud.
Must be Ensar's cousin or something, right? The last name.
Last name's Oud.
Yeah, so... yeah, a lot of people are excited about it. There weren't very many bottles out there. So there were some full bottles, there were some 10 ml bottles, and they sold out pretty quickly. I think the full bottles sold out in
They're all limited edition. If you're watching this video, you probably already know what's up, but...
I mean, I think there's probably a lot of people watching this video that are much more familiar with his catalog,
than we
his
are,
collections,
sure.
than we are, because we're pretty new to Areej le Doré, right? So we have... some from his 6th collection. I have one from the 5th collection.
So why don't you just say what you have? You have Musklave.
Yeah, so I have Musklave. I have War and Peace 2.
And I have Grandinia.
Yeah.
And now you have Chinese Oud.
Right, right. So yeah, that's pretty much the intro to this. And anyone watching this, I'm sure is excited about, what this smells like if they weren't able to get their hands on it. What's another thing to consider about this? I don't think there were any samples released before this one came out. I think this was, Russian Adam put out there on the internet some videos about this, kind of like leading up to the release. So, you're taking his word that you're going to like it. And, I mean, personally, I have no qualms blind buying anything from Areej le Doré.
We haven't, we've only blind bought from him.
Only, yeah.
We haven't had any regrets so far. So
I have no regrets, and we've said this before in some other videos. Sometimes a fragrance may not be what you thought it would be, but it's going to be good. Mm-hmm. And the market is, the demand for these is so much greater than the supply.
Yeah, you can
if you
flip
don't
it
like
easily.
something, you could sell it on eBay, and also, I have to say this: sell it for what you bought it for. Because that doesn't help Russian Adam, if you want to sell something for double what you paid for it. And it doesn't help somebody else.
It seems like there was a bit of a racket where people buy up a few bottles just to resell them once they're sold out. So. Right,
but it goes to show you that people are willing to pay a lot of money for his work, but, there's also people out there that didn't get a chance to buy it and would love it, so, help each other out in this world of fragrance, because this is a small world here, and not everyone can get their hands on everything they want.
That feels very opportunistic and gross.
It does. So before we really get more into what this is about, I think we might have started a trend that needs to continue. We have a wine to enjoy during this review. Mm-hmm. So this is Taya? How would you say that?
I don't know. Where's it from?
It is from Spain.
Oh, Taja.
Taja. So this is southeast Spain. This is Monastrell grape. So Monastrell is also known as Mourvèdre. Mourvèdre from France. So it's the same grape, planted in a different spot. This particular wine is all organic. The Monastrell grape is known to be very, very heavy. Very tannic, and it could take on some leathery characteristics. So let's give this a shot. I've had some Monastrell from Spain.
I'm gonna crack the window open.
Okay. I've had some Monastrell from Spain before, and I find that they're fantastic values for what you get. All of Spain. But it's less talked about because I think Rioja just kind of overshadows everything. But let's give it a shot.
And to develop what you were mentioning earlier, about how reselling perfumes doesn't help the artisan who creates them. In the same vein, buy directly from the artisan as much as you can to support them, because when it's sold by a distributor like Lucky Scent, as much as we love Scent Bar and all these things, they're only getting 50% of what they would usually make.
Somewhere in there.
That's standard.
Yeah.
So that's something to consider as well if you like someone's work and if you want to support them, buy from their website if you can.
Yeah, buy from their website, but it's also good to support local businesses as much as you can. So if you have a shop in your hometown, I do both. I buy from artisan websites and I buy from Scent Bar or any of the other kind of places here in New York. So we're very lucky to be in New York City because we have so many places we could buy from.
It's really true, yeah. And we'd like to keep them.
Yeah, and it's just a great resource having something like Scent Bar because you can go and literally spray everything in the store, smell it, take home samples. So that's a resource that is worth me going to and being a patron of the store because it's.
But if you have the option of like buying a sample directly from the artisan or like from Surrender to Chance. Might be better to go with the artisan.
But, they all have their place, and I tend to kind of go where makes the most sense.
It's just something to consider where your money's going,
Yeah. All right, so let's give this a swirl.
All right. Looks like red wine.
Yep, it's red. It looks like it comes from grapes, but we're not sure.
Smells hot. What's the 14.5%?
Yeah. So that's the thing with Monastrell. It's usually there's a lot of sugar in it. So when you
I mean that's a lot.
You add the yeast, you turn it into alcohol. There's a lot of alcohol. So
it is tannic, very tannic, acidic. Wow.
It's all of the above. Yeah.
It's
very acidic.
Yeah. That's big.
It's got a very kind of rich, dark fruit character in the mid palate.
Yeah. Yeah, like dried fruit, pruny thing going on. And it's got an oily texture on the tongue. I don't know how to describe that.
Yeah, it's got
beyond the tannins. It's like
a thicker mouth feel, as they say. Mouth feel. I think it's lovely. A wine like this could age for a very long time. Bandol is the same grape in Bandol, which we talked about. And I said that I broke my rule of, 10 years to drink a Bandol. I think these are probably similar.
I feel like I would enjoy this more chilled.
Yeah, and it's kind of warm in this room. So
it is.
In New York, we had like a 70-degree day out of nowhere, so it's a bit warm. But that's okay. That's okay.
A bit of cork in my mouth.
Yeah, so let's get into this Chinese oud. So Russian Adam did a collaboration with his friend Jamira Oud, which we mentioned, who is in China and is a distiller and I believe provided a lot of the ingredients that went into Chinese oud. And they're all, the origin of all the ingredients are China. So that's
really cool.
The concept here that we're dealing with. Namely, how do you say the province again? I looked this up because I wanted to.
Hainan.
I believe that was it. Province. Yeah. So this oud comes from there. It's a vintage oud. It's wild from 2003. This also includes sandalwood, Mysore sandalwood, that is also vintage because you can't get that anymore. And then some interesting things like some of these florals from China. So rose, jasmine, gardenia, and the gardenia is actually a CO2, which kind of was interesting to us as we were smelling it.
So CO2 extraction is a very sort of recent development in plant extractions for perfume.
Probably the most recent, probably the 90s, right?
I believe so. And it's a cold extraction method, which means that you're not applying heat to get what you're trying to get out of the plant. So it stays a little truer to what the fresh plant smells like because you're not actually cooking it.
Yeah.
So there's some really interesting stuff that comes out of CO2 extractions, but it is a little more volatile. It's a little more of a top note situation.
Yeah, so it's truer to the smell of the plant, but it doesn't last
over
as
that,
long.
but I mean, in true Areej style, very gaudy packaging,
very pointy.
Yeah,
so it's interesting. So this whole package, right, that we're looking at was inspired by Chinese architecture, calligraphy. This says Chinese oud on it.
Okay.
The architecture being the top, and also an Arabian kind of what do they call them? The
like a
burner.
Yeah.
Right? So it kind of encompasses all of that.
It does look
into
like
the packaging.
those like Bakur burners.
So, really cool concept.
Yeah.
He's always got excellent packaging.
Puts a hell of a lot of effort into the packaging, yeah.
He really does. And it's,
for an artisan producer, I think it's pretty commendable.
I have no idea where he would go for this stuff.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even know kind of where to start. So...
And short runs, too. I mean, I'm
Right.
sure it costs them a fortune.
It must.
Yeah.
It must. So this one, I believe, was a little bit more than some of his other releases, but it's also more limited, I think, than some of his other stuff. So you have this on your arm that you sprayed a while ago.
Yeah.
I'm going to spray this on my hand now, so we could kind of compare the base notes and the mid and
I'll
the
just
top.
get it on my other arm, so I can
Okay.
smell myself.
Hand, arm?
Yeah, put on my hand. All right.
So right away,
Up top,
this is like,
the top note is what's most exciting about this for me.
yes.
It's very boozy, like an apple brandy, so like a Calvados Armagnac sort of thing, which is like a type of cognac. And then like a strong marzipan, like a boozy marzipan note.
Yeah, it's so it says right on it boozy aldehydes, and yes, 100%, I'm getting that.
Yeah.
And
really
also
edible.
Yeah, it is edible, but you're getting that oud in there, and I feel like this
and it just like creeps up after that top note, which lasts all of like 10 seconds. It's just like a really pleasant surprise. It certainly grabs your attention.
It does.
And then the oud sort of like pops in and says hi.
Yeah, it's just kind of in the background, but that boozy aldehyde thing, it does disperse quickly.
It does, but it's a very interesting way to sort of introduce the oud. I did not expect that at all.
Yeah. So, I think when a lot of people kind of read the copy on this, they thought, oh, it's going to be a boozy fragrance. It's only boozy for a very short time.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't call this a
boozy oud.
No, it's not a booze fragrance, but it has that top in there. And the oud in this, it's not like a super funky, like Hindi oud.
I wouldn't describe it as barnyardy.
There is a slight gorgonzola quality.
Yeah, it's a little animalic. Like lanolin, sheepskin, that sort of smell.
Yes.
Beeswaxy.
Yeah. Yep. Which is kind of, we smell that a lot in oud, in at least the ouds that we've tried.
Yeah.
But this isn't like the big stinker.
No.
You get a little bit of the gorgonzola, but that kind of tempers as it kind of goes along.
Yeah, I view it as a really good happy medium between those like really big like Oud Maximus ouds, and something a little more buried, a little more structural in the fragrance,
Right.
like if it's used as a scaffold for the rest of the fragrance.
And we're not oud experts.
Not by any means.
We're still very new to
We're
oud,
novices,
so we may not, have all the words or all the regions that we could compare this to, but I do notice it starts off funky, a little bit cheesy, but then it just smooths out. And maybe that's because of the oud, maybe that's because of some of the other notes in it. I don't know, but this is not like an offensive smell. Some ouds are challenging. This is not challenging.
I think it depends who you ask.
And how many ouds you've smelled, right?
Yeah. So let's see. What I noticed in the heart, which we're getting into right now, is a really strong mentholated freshness up top that sort of overpowers the rest of the composition for me for like a good 10 minutes.
And I didn't get this when I was smelling this on my own.
Yeah.
I knew what you were saying as soon as you said it, but it wasn't like kind of apparent to me.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that kind of minty quality can be in some ouds, but it's also in a lot of naturals, all these aromatic ingredients, or at least sort of like eucalyptus-like quality, right? So I was looking at the florals, and it could be the gardenia CO2, because I've smelled gardenia enfleurage, and it's incredibly minty, like very strong. So I'm thinking maybe that's what's contributing to this, because the CO2 would make it sort of like a top-middle note.
And also, there's some there's jasmine in here as well, which is indolic in itself. But I have a hard time, and we were discussing this, I have a hard time picking up the florals in this. Like, I know they're there, but it's not like, this isn't a floral fragrance that's just like huge flowers in your face. It's just kind of all in there, right?
So,
it's doing...
in Russian Adam's words, a bouquet of extremely rare, pure and natural florals, namely rose, jasmine, and gardenia, all of which were grown and extracted in China, which is very cool.
Yes, very cool.
So the way that the florals are interacting with the blend reminded us a lot of sort of an early 20th century Chypre style fragrance, and more of a classical floral construction.
Where you can't really identify one particular
where it just
flower.
Adds this air of floralcy to the fragrance at large, but you're not going to pick out unprompted like, oh, that's a jasmine, that's a rose, Yeah. So it's sort of a little more rounded out.
Yes, I would agree. And actually, Chypre, that's probably not a bad way to kind of frame this fragrance.
Yes and no. That's what's intriguing about this fragrance. It has the oak moss, it has the patchouli, it has, that floral bouquet.
Yeah.
But it's an oud, and it's got that weird boozy top note. So it's a very strangely staggered fragrance.
Interesting twist on the architecture of the turn of the century kind of fragrance.
And I will note that when I first got Gardenia, I had that similar impression where it felt very sort of staccato, and sort of like everything was floating and not blended together, like floating separate. And then a month later, it macerated and it just sort of like smoothed out.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to bring up, because I had a completely different impression. Well, not completely different, but I had a much different impression of Gardenia now that you've had it for a while. Like, you sprayed it I guess a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, wow, what is that? And I liked it at first smell, but I like it even more now, and I'm actually considering buying my own bottle of it. So that just kind of goes to show you.
Yeah, and because these are limited releases, I have a feeling he does, of course, let them macerate, but, probably has to get them out the door pretty quickly. So
and some of that stuff just takes time. I mean, it takes time in modern
fragrance. This is full of
ingredients
that age really beautifully, too. So it's going to continue to evolve beyond just maceration over time, which is nice.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to smelling it, more as the months go by, and also trying it in the summertime. We're getting on spring here, and it diffuses even more. Actually, the first time I put this on, I got it in an evening. I sprayed it on myself, and I started to work out. I got on my erg and started erging. I think
that's rowing for people who don't speak erg.
The best way to test a fragrance is to just get hot. Get hot, and get
It's like one of those adjustable burners.
It really is, and you put it on yourself, and it was just diffusing like crazy. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, summertime. I think we might even get another kind of a different experience from it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really interesting. This has like sandalwood in it. I've said before, I'm not a sandalwood nerd. I don't love it. I don't think you're like a huge fan of it, right? It's
fine.
That
said, we haven't really smelled a good quality sandalwood in isolation.
In isolation, no.
We've certainly smelled it in a lot of our vintage fragrances.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's in every vintage fragrance, which is why sandalwood is now extinct. Or endangered, rather, sorry.
Right.
But yeah, I think I don't have a very strong impression of what it smells like, except for that it's a creamy lactonic, terpenic material. So it's like a creamy wood.
Yeah, it is. And it's also just kind of like everywhere, I feel like in America, like in synthetic forms and in cosmetics, especially like men's, shaving
I'm getting
stuff.
like a mossy old leather, kind of mildewy in a very pleasant way.
And I want to say something about the patchouli in this. It reminds me a lot of War and Peace 2's aspect of patchouli. However Russian Adam is doing this, or wherever he's getting it, it's kind of unmistakable. I find that it's very unique to his work, and I don't really smell patchouli in the same way in other fragrances.
Well, he's using aged patchouli, which
That probably matters a lot.
factors a whole lot. If you let patchouli sit for even just 5 years, all of that sharp, minty top note is going to just basically go away, and you just get that, like, rich base, and it'll go a little more in that, like, chocolatey direction.
Yeah, yeah.
Which this has a little bit of that chocolatiness. But, like, more of a dark chocolate, you know? But yeah, my impression of the middle note is that it's cool because of the mentholated quality, but also warm because of all the ingredients beneath there and the richness of the oud.
Yeah.
And so it's got like a sharpness and a roundness, is really playing with contrast in a way that I appreciate. And the evolution is very surprising for this kind of fragrance. So and then there's
so the base of this, you disagree with me, or you're just not as familiar with the fragrance I'm going to bring up. The base of this reminds me a lot of Shalimar. A lot. But
yeah, I can
however,
see why.
where Shalimar has like the kind of civet thing, I feel like the oud is taking place of the animalic civet.
Right.
So you're getting the animalics from the oud, but it's taking that place.
Well, there's certainly vanilla in the base, so there's a vanilla tincture
just
in
a
there.
very creamy animalic vanilla.
It's a very edible vanilla at the base there.
But it's got that like
not-
baby diaper quality that Shalimar
but like
does.
a boozy vanilla, like real
Right.
vanilla, you know? Which is very different from like vanillin, which is Shalimar.
Yes, yes. But I find the dry down to be pretty similar to that. And I say that, you know, comparing it to my modern bottle EDP. Not exactly like it, but it does kind of give me that feeling.
What I noticed about the dry down, which also adds to that edible quality, is cinnamon. There's a spice came through towards the end that reminds me of cinnamon, not in the heat, but in the cinnamon, like the distinctive cinnamon smell. So it's like that beautiful hot, like roundness, that warmth, which is cinnamic alcohol, I believe. So that's not the hot part of the cinnamon, but it's that lovely warm round part of cinnamon.
So would you
and
say
that's a base note. So it could be that.
Would you say it has a similar quality to like the cinnamon aspect that's in like the vintage Mitsuko extracts?
Yeah,
how it has
something
like
that.
that, like you said, it's not the hot, it's like the warm kind of spicy character.
Yeah, and it's not calling out like this is a spice that's very recognizable and it's overpowering everything. It's just bolstering that ambery vanillic base. It's just a little bit of little something.
Yeah, spicy amber I think would be a good way to kind of characterize the base of this.
Yeah.
As would be, you know, to characterize Shalimar.
I really like the dry down.
Yeah, the dry down is incredible. And actually, you know, I had it on last night again.
It's a gourmand dry down to me.
It is oddly kind of...
which is surprising from Areej le Doré.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a fragrance that I think at first I thought I sort of wish this was doing more, and then as I spent time with it, I was like, no, this is doing a lot.
Yeah, it's unmistakably Russian Atom when you smell it.
Yeah, you have to spend time with it, and it's the kind of thing that will smell different one day to the other, and you'll notice different things.
Yeah, it was really strange because I had it on all last night, and I, you know, went to sleep, and this morning I woke up, and in my living room, I was just smelling this, just all over the place. I'm like, where is it? I don't even know where it was, but it was just still like kind of just in the air, I guess. Yeah. I don't know, on my couch or whatever.
It projects surprisingly a lot for an extrait.
Yeah.
But not in that perfumey kind of way where it's, you know, aggressively giving you a radius around you.
Yeah, it doesn't have that.
It's just a little atmosphere.
Perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
It creates an atmosphere.
Yeah.
It doesn't have like that
subtle.
synthetic, harsh kind of
It's subtle
thing.
and it's lovely.
Yeah.
Very comforting.
I mean, I think it's lovely. I think a lot of people are going to like it. you know,
you can't get it anymore except for on the secondary market.
Right, you can't get it anymore. So, you know, hopefully people, you know, if they're not into it for whatever reason, they're selling it and, you know, you can get your hands on it. Kind of just like one more thing I really want to kind of talk about in this is it's kind of a tired conversation about like the whole, you know, designer, niche, artisan kind of conversation. Oh, what, you know, what's the difference between them? Is there a difference anymore? I would say Russian Adam is one of the perfumers that is completely artisan in every sense of the word.
How do we define that, though?
So, good point. So,
this sounds like a mini stink.
Okay, but let's talk about Russian Adam because that's what we're talking about. We're only talking about one fragrance, so okay, you know. He is not only making them all himself and composing them. In most of the cases, he's distilling the stuff himself, and he's making
tinctures,
a raw ingredient and turning it into
an oil,
something that can be used in perfumery. Whereas that's kind of rare, right? There's people doing it.
It's not as rare as you think, but yeah, it is definitely a lot more labor on his part, and but it also means that his fragrances smell undeniably like his fragrances, you know.
Yeah, I think that's really the key. Is, you know, you can't just kind of go to, you know, Perfumer's Apprentice and buy all the ingredients for this kind of stuff off the shelf. Also, a lot of the stuff that he has is old vintage stuff that don't exist anymore.
Right. He buys up antique oils. I don't know where he finds these things.
I don't know, you know.
But that's a really cool concept, and that's why his fragrances are limited edition, because the resources are finite.
Right, exactly.
And that's why he can he can manage to make these fragrances that use endangered ingredients because he's using old oils, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. So, you know, I would say that, you know, he's really raising the bar, I think, for a lot of other, you know, artisan fragrances. You know, he's saying, you know, this is what it could be, right? That's not to say
artisan doesn't mean necessarily that you distill your own materials. No, I think that was confusing.
No.
It means that you're the perfumer and you sell your own fragrances. That's all that means. So it's like a one-person show.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he takes things a little bit further in his creation. So I think that's worthwhile to point out. And I think the whole limited edition thing is a whole nother conversation. But these aren't limited edition for the sake of being limited edition, right? They're limited edition because you can't get these ingredients anymore. Yeah. It's done. This is it. So, you know, I don't really mind paying the price for this because I know the story of what went into this.
You get what you pay for.
I value that.
No, I mean, it's he could easily charge more for this kind of stuff.
Well,
I mean, this is a higher price point than its usual.
Yeah, by looking at the secondary market and what people are paying, yes, he could.
Yeah.
Right? But, you know, he doesn't, and we get to benefit from that, you know, as much as we can right now. But yeah, I just want to really acknowledge, you know, all the work that he puts into his fragrances. And, you know, there's others out there, you know.
And he's got a YouTube channel where he talks about his process a little bit. We'll put all that in the description box. We always put a lot of information down there.
Really, really fantastic. And I think, you know, it's one thing to be able to, you know, extract these ingredients, but it's another thing to be able to actually make a great composition with them. And I feel like he does both.
Absolutely.
You know?
I mean, it's the skill of the perfumer that makes a beautiful perfume more so than beautiful ingredients.
It's very true.
It's very true.
And if you could do both, that's something really special.
It is, absolutely. So I think that
that
wraps it up.
Pretty much concludes it. I'm really curious about other people's thoughts on this.
Absolutely.
So, you know, if you got it under your nose, you know, tell us what you think. I love trying to smell new nuances in this stuff. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So. Till next time, stay safe.
Stay safe. Last thought, reminds me a little bit of cookie dough on the dry down.
Even better to eat.
Yeah. Cheers.